it's hard. Your first job is hard. Retaining that job is equally hard because no one has any statistics on how many immigrants have lost their jobs within the first year.
What are the most common mistakes that you see?
Do not talk about religion, sex, personal stuff. Don't ask, don't tell.
How about politics?
Definitely not.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Dream Podcast. I'm here with someone that you already might know from the first episode, Nick Noorani. He came back today to talk about new opportunities for Canadian immigrants, opportunities that will help immigrants succeed in Canada today and in the near future. Hey, Nick, thank you for being here again.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
You were just telling me behind the scenes that you just came back from Ottawa.
Yeah.
What were you doing there? What happened?
So Ottawa was Metropolis. Metropolis is the largest gathering of everyone who has anything to do with the immigration file, shall we say. So whether it is immigration consultants and lawyers, or it is immigration settlement agencies, or provincial and federal governments, and all of them coming in there to have discussions and discourse on where are we, where do we want to be. The pandemic actually changed a lot. Because what happened is when the pandemic hit, no one was at any stage prepared for the transition to digital. Now, I had been doing digital since 2010. But for a lot of people to start delivering content, and the discussion has now, over the last 2 years, it's been, how do we have a hybrid model? Should it be digital first, or should it be in-person first? So all of these discussions are going on, and great discussions. But at the same time, for me, the discussion has to be, like I mentioned in the last episode, with the immigrant at the center. What is it that the immigrant wants? Let's recognize that 77% of immigrants who come into Canada do not use government services.
Oh, how come? What are they using instead?
They look for it themselves because they're looking for it digitally. And if the digital is not there, they will gravitate towards YouTubers and towards Instagrammers who don't have their best interests at heart.
There's also a risk for there's other threats, other risks.
Yes, there are a huge amount of risks, and if the government is absent from that, if the government is not in YouTube, the government is not on Instagram, the government is not on Facebook, then what happens is it leaves the whole space open to these scamsters.
Scamsters, what do you define as scamster as?
Well, someone who turns around and says, if you're landing in Canada, I'll charge you $30 for half an hour. Now, first of all, who is that person? Do you know who that person is? You're going to give your credit card, you're going to give all your details to that person online. You don't know who that person is. How can you trust this person? Mm-hmm. You've got people who use YouTube to make money off Google because they get 1 million, 2 million views on a video. But that's all clickbait.
What are the videos about?
The videos, don't go to Canada. Canada is a terrible place. If you got your visa, don't go to Canada. So naturally, you're getting ready to go, and you say, what is happening out here? Let me go and click on that. And that guy or gal, whoever it may be, is laughing all the way to the bank.
Okay, just clickbaits.
2 million views on a YouTube. If you check out, go to YouTube. Mm-hmm. Put in over there, going to Canada, moving to Canada, immigrating to Canada. Go and see. You will find people who got millions of views.
So what has to be changed now?
What has to be changed? The government has to start taking ownership over this. Number one is, I learned at the conference something that actually startled me, and that is that people who are in settlement agencies are not provided with cell phones, smartphones, to use social media. How are they going to deliver the message? It's not that the government doesn't recognize this, but it will get to change, but it will take long.
Are you actually doing something personally to fill that gap?
We are. So I started looking at the reports that came in, and the reports came in that in the first week, 1 million immigrants lost their jobs.
in February or March 2020.
1 million. So I said, that's really awful. Can you imagine? 60% of them, incidentally, are women, were women. And there was a big concern that the women would not get back into the labor force. We do know that today, women immigrants, especially immigrants of color, have a harder time getting employment than men do.
Really? How come?
Oh, the huge barriers. It just is. It's the way, the attitude that women don't get jobs. And when I saw this, I said, okay. I put up a post on LinkedIn saying that if any immigrant is hurting, without a job, and you lost your job, connect with me, and I'll have a chat with you. I actually had to delete that message, that post, because I was overwhelmed with the responses. Anyway, so the number of responses was such that I could not obviously talk to everyone. It's just physically impossible.
And who was contacting you? People
all over the country
who lost their jobs.
I've lost my job. I was talking. Out of the guys I was talking to, the girls and the guys I was talking to, the one guy was an engineer. He came here as a student. He had gotten married, come back with his bride to his new home. A week later, the pandemic hit. He says, I've got a bride with me. She's just new. We moved into a house. We got a new mortgage. I have not got any money. So I'm talking to this big guy on Zoom, and he starts crying. And he says, I have no choice but to end my life. And I'm like, I was completely frozen because I said, I am not equipped to handle this kind of emotion. It's pretty hard. But at that time, I decided the only thing I could do was keep talking to him until his wife got home, because his wife had gone out to buy groceries. So if I could not leave this guy in this state, because if he would, though he was crying, he was sobbing uncontrollably, I was not comfortable leaving him alone. Mm-hmm. So until his wife came and I spoke to his wife and told his wife what he was saying to me, then he keeps sending me messages that we're now settled. But it's that edge of the cliff story, right? So many immigrants were on the edge of the cliff with their arms flailing, trying to stop from falling. So as I selected 26. I started working with them. I talked to them 2-3 times a day.
You were mentoring them, coaching them,
just having conversation,
coaching.
And there are so many words and so many things that you could ascribe to, but I was just chatting with them. Mm-hmm. And so by chatting with them, they felt that there's someone who cares. They feel that there's someone who understands. This is another immigrant who understands, right? In a matter of weeks, of the 26, 25 were working.
Oh, wow.
The 26th one went back to his home country. 25 were working. I went through an engineer who was from Malaysia, whose cover letter was a stream of consciousness. And so I said, how am I going to correct? Now, this is where all the strings all tied together to what I am doing currently. I said, how am I going to correct an engineer's cover letter? I'm not an engineer. So I said, okay, let me find out. There's a friend of mine who's an engineer who came here, and she's an immigrant. She's actually doing project management. And she said, yes, I'll take a look at his cover letter and I'll rewrite it. She wrote his cover letter. She said, okay, here's the cover letter. I sent it off to the guy. And then I did a mock interview with him. And so I asked him the question. So, John, let's just call him John. How much do you expect to be paid for this job? So he said, whatever you can give me, $45,000. I said, hey, $45,000 in Vancouver? You can't rent a bathroom for that kind of money. You come here with a wife and a kid. What are you saying? What is the right answer then, Nick? The right answer is, what does this job offer? That's the right answer. It's you're not being rude. You're just saying every job, someone has put a budget to that job. You're just asking, what is that budget? Some companies will not agree to give you that budget. They say, no, still tell me what. Well, you know what? I did my research, and according to my research, my salary should be somewhere between 70 to 85,000. Okay, all right. So now you're giving figures that you've taken from Glassdoor or somewhere that you've gone on and got that data, and that's not very far from what industry standards are. But the point is this: that they did not know. But at the end of the 6 weeks, I didn't have anything to do because these guys had all gone off there. They were working. I had no one to talk to.
So you were coaching them on how to prepare for interviews.
Every single thing. And the most important part was to tell them, to give them hope. Mm-hmm. Because, the pandemic did awful things to
restore their confidence.
Exactly. And they gave me the idea that because I can't talk to 20 people in a day, what if I had 20 people and if each one of them spoke to one person in the day? And that's how the whole program started creating. So I went out and I said, I want to create a software that will match someone on the basis of their profession. And then there are several other indicators which are there in case someone is not using their professions. For example, a doctor, you can't practice medicine the moment you come to a country. So I created the software. So the first year, Elton, we did 4,000 matches.
Oh, wow. That's a lot, isn't it?
Yes. Then those 4,000 matches, I did a survey in March. 70% of them who had done 5 or more matches were working in their field within 6 weeks.
How does it work? Who matches with whom?
And software matches you.
So you are an immigrant?
You're an immigrant. You go in, fill up a form.
And you match with an employer?
You're matched with another immigrant in the same profession.
Oh, so with another like-minded person.
Not even like-minded. Profession. It's professional.
Okay.
Someone asked me, what about for social reasons? It's social reasons. You go and figure it out yourself.
Okay.
But
you're
connected to someone in your profession.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens is you're talking to Adrian because you met Adrian, who's another photographer.
Yeah.
Who's another cinematographer. So now you're talking to each other and you're saying, how does this country work? How does Canada work? What do you charge? What are freelance charges? You didn't know any of this, Elton.
Yeah.
How much do I charge for a day? Well, I've been asked to go for a day's shoot. I don't know how much to charge for it. All of these answers you suddenly get. How do I open a bank account? A lot of immigrants come from countries where if you start your own business, you have to get government permission to do that. Canada, you don't. So there's so much learning now because you're talking to someone in your profession. You understand the hidden job market. You understand what does a day look like. If I'm an HR professional, what does my day look like in Canada versus India or Nigeria or Philippines? What are the soft skills I require? Which are the most important soft skills? What additional training can I get? What are the industry bodies I should connect? All of this stuff, which no one could give you the information, you're getting live from someone who's walked that walk before.
So the app is a matchmaker. And do they speak in their native language as well or only in English?
Only in English.
Only in English?
Only in English.
Uh-huh.
No, because English is the language of success. But the fact of the matter is, if you do not speak English, you're going to be at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
So first year we did 4,000 matches. Last year we did 10,800 something. But imagine those lives who've been changed.
How many people do you have now? You said within the first year you got 5,000 matches?
4,000.
4,000 matches. And now you were, what, 2 years?
Last year, 10,800, yeah.
Wow. How much further do we have to go in order to get to a stage in Canada where you would consider that you got your job done?
If you get a job in your profession, and if you are with as close to the declared wage that you should be paid, you're okay. Okay. I always talk about so some of the things that I talk about is you have to look at life in Canada in 3 stages. getting your first job is the most important one. Yes, it's hard. Your first job is hard. Retaining that job is equally hard because no one has any statistics on how many immigrants have lost their jobs within the first year. They don't get past that 30 days, 90 days probation period. No one talks about that. How do you prepare for Canadian workplace communication? We do all of that stuff. We talk about all of these things. So getting your first job, retaining your job, and then growing within the job. If you don't grow within the job, how is it a career? It's a job then.
It's not a career.
You have to grow. I saw one of the people who went through the program just a couple of days ago. He says, Nick, we celebrated on our Wednesday call 3 weeks ago. He got a new job. And he says, I just got an offer for a job. What should I do? I said, here's reality. The best time to look for a job is when you've got a job. The worst time to look for a job is when you don't have one. What does that mean? Always keep your options open. He said, what should I do? I said, listen to them. He said, but I've just said, yeah, that's fine. When people get laid off by the thousands by companies, loyalty is one-sided at that time. So let's be very clear. I am not a fan of immigrants being loyal to a company when today corporate Canada, US, the world has turned around and said, we'll drop people the moment we feel that our budgets aren't being met. Okay. It works both ways, mate.
Can always leave and pursue something. But of course, not in our marriages. No. That's a totally different story.
Well, yes, I would hope so.
But if you have a job.
If you've got a job and if someone offers you another job, listen. Don't say no.
What do you think immigrants should know when it comes to negotiating their salary after they got they got past this 2 or 3 interviews and they are at the final stages?
Yeah.
What are immigrants doing different?
Number one is we are so, suddenly you're so grateful that you got a job, you don't even negotiate. So you'll pay me 60,000? Okay. This is dumb. When you would not do that in your home country, why would you do it here? You have to understand, there's a transaction that's happening. You're agreeing to do X amount of work. In exchange, the employer is paying you. It's as simple as that. No one works for anything other than money. Okay, let's be very clear. Anyone who says otherwise is talking BS. Yes, it helps if you're working for something which has a purpose. Of course it helps. That's how not-for-profits function, because everyone gravitates towards them. And I know especially this newer generation that the Gen X are very keen to go and do something which has purpose. But please understand, you have to still pay rent and you still have to pay for food. That's important. So I'm not a big fan of this, and I turn around and tell them absolutely no, take a look at it. Don't close your options. Now, when I started this program, what happened was a very interesting thing that happened. After the first year, where I said we got 4,000 matches and 70% of them got jobs. So when that happened, a lot of them who had gone through the process came back to me and said, Nick, we've got a job and we think Immigrant Network is so cool. How can we help more immigrants? So what I ended up with was an ambassador program. So they're the ambassadors. We've got 23 ambassadors, Elton, from 10 different countries and 12 different professions. Now think about this.
And what does an ambassador do?
The ambassadors is a voluntary position. So they'll come every Wednesday, they'll talk to immigrants, and they'll give their expertise in their field. So someone who is a banker will talk about banking needs, information, so on and so forth. And you've got the audience out there who will ask you questions. Someone who is an HR professional, we do stuff on corporate communication culture. What is the culture in your corporate in the company you work at? We need to understand how Canada works. all of that becomes so important. The ambassadors are there for that. So not only the ambassadors come to the Wednesday call, every Wednesday we have a call, which is a live call, which is supposed to be for 90 minutes, but sometimes has gone on for a little longer, 2.5 hours kind of thing, depending on people. People come there, people will cry, people will get emotionally upset. So we are very conscious of the fact that this is a safe place for them, and we tell them that. The ambassadors also have themselves listed on my website. So any immigrant can directly connect with them through LinkedIn. And ambassadors take time out of their life to talk to people to help them get jobs. I got an email just last week saying, Nick, just wanted to let you know that because of this ambassador of yours, I got a job. Thank you very much for the work that you do. This is what we do. The ambassadors are this incredible force. Remember I told you about how can I create? I've created an army of people because I recognize that I do not want it to be about Nick Noorani. I want to create that next generation, that army that can take it forward even if I'm not there.
And do what?
That's how the dream lives. That's how you leave behind a legacy that is going to ensure that immigrants come to this country, and you've got people. I've got 23 people who will fight to spend time with an immigrant.
An army.
Absolutely.
How important is networking?
Networking is very important. Now networking, again, during the pandemic, we quickly realized that there was very little physical networking taking place. But I believe networking as in the physical space has a lot of flaws. I'll tell you. So I went to the event in Ottawa. I've still got about 30 cards on my desk that I have to send replies to. I've already sent 30 emails to the other people I met. The point of the matter is it is not an organized system. Most of the time, this is what happens when you go to a networking event. You go to a networking event, you'll meet all the people, you'll put their cards in the pocket. Next morning, you look at the card and say, chuck it into the dustbin. That's not networking. Immigrants need to understand networking has to happen and can happen in a digital fashion. That's one of the subjects that came out of the discussion in Ottawa. How do we start transitioning things to the digital medium, where immigrants can be sitting at home? Some immigrants have turned around and said, the reason we like what Immigrant Networks does is because I'm an introvert. But at least when I get on that call with someone, I'm in the comfort of my home. So I feel a little more comfortable having a conversation with a stranger. This is all to say that networking is evolving thanks to, obviously, the growth in digital media, as well as LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become now such an important
Tool.
I would say tool. I'd say it's critical. I don't want to even use the word important. I think it's critical because to people who connect with me, Elton, on an average, I get about 100 people connect with me a day.
On LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How many connections do you have?
17, 18,000.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for replying to my message.
I actually have someone whose job is only to handle my LinkedIn account.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you better have someone.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say 80% of immigrants who come here do not understand how to use LinkedIn. Let me actually broaden it. 80% of Canadians don't know how to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn can be an incredible tool. LinkedIn is not the place I go and put up my grandkids' photographs. No. LinkedIn is how do I turn around and empower people who are in my ambassador program? How do I talk about them? Right? That's what the whole. When I look at LinkedIn, when I started Immigrant Networks, I spent $5,000 a month in advertising, and I barely got 400 registrations. Today, on an average, I get about 400 registrations without spending a dime.
Because of LinkedIn.
Because of LinkedIn.
because of the exposure that you got
Because of the
by being there. And what are the most common mistakes that you see immigrants doing on LinkedIn once they are
I'll write a book about this one.
You are, right? Are you? That could be your third book.
I'll at least write a post on it. The top of the list.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. What? This is not a phone. And so when I see someone who does that, I know that that person is not ready for any kind of help, because that person needs to go back to basics. How do you use LinkedIn? Please go onto this website. Not many people know about this. I'll tell you, it's a site called Google, and put it over there. How do you use LinkedIn? Learn, for God's sake. You can't turn around and do that. Number one. Number two, you put in a LinkedIn profile, there's no photograph. Why? I'm shy. I don't care. Do you say that when you go for a passport? I don't want a photograph because I'm shy. You won't get a passport. LinkedIn is your passport for a job. You have to understand everything you do on LinkedIn is going to dictate your chance of getting a job in this country. Simple, straightforward.
Tell me more mistakes.
Where do you live? So you say, okay, here's Nick Noorani. Okay, I am this. Where do you live? Canada. Really? Do you know how big this country is? So if I'm looking to recruit someone, how do I know whether I should hire you? Because I'm looking for someone to work at St. John, New Brunswick. And if you're in Vancouver, that's a heck of a commute. Silly mistakes. Then the other one, which I've noticed of late, people come in. So this is an example, and I'm going to actually talk about India. People come in, and you look at their LinkedIn profile, and it's good, except when you say, let's see what this person is talking about, and you go and click on that analysis. Every single post, every single like is about India and Indian companies and Indian products. Now, if you are someone who's going to hire for Canada, is this person in Canada? Is this in India? Right now, a lot of people pretend to be in Canada, but they're not in Canada because they think they'll get jobs. So I keep saying to them, here's the truth. If you lie on a public platform like LinkedIn and misrepresent yourself, is the employer going to trust you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that. No, of course not, you didn't. This is where it becomes so difficult. And the last, which is again, it's a long list. I'm telling you, I could write a book. I have a LinkedIn account. I put it. I think I created one 6 years ago. And no, it's there. Okay. So tell me, how often do you look at your Instagram? Oh, about 6 times a day. Okay. And a professional social media platform, you'd look once in 6 years. Do you see something wrong in this? Oh, so what should I do? What do I do if I go to LinkedIn? Now, my photograph is there. My thing is there. I've taken it from my resume. I said, how about talking to people? How do I talk to people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was going to ask you, how actually can they talk to a stranger?
Okay, so I'm not a LinkedIn expert. I got to say this.
Yeah.
I got to say this.
But if it were you 25 years ago, how would you do it?
So first I would turn around and say, let me find people who are in my profession. So I'm looking for someone and say, okay, Elton's in photography. So he will be coming across a lot of ad agencies. Let me go and connect with Elton. So first what I'll do is, instead of sending him a message, I'll start liking the posts that Elton is putting up. So Elton will see, oh, Nick Noorani, who's this guy? Okay, interesting. Okay. So I'll keep liking his posts, and over a period of time, I'll start making comments on his posts. Elton, that's a great point. I completely agree with you. Now, suddenly I've raised my profile in Elton's eyes coming here, right? And so Elton suddenly says, okay, this is interesting. There was a case last week where someone cited this exact process. And then after they had connected with that person's company posted a job which fitted the exact profile
of that person.
And that person said to me, and you say, "Hey, Steph, I just saw a job. I've been following you for a while. I just saw that your company posted a job, and this would be a great job. I'd love to throw my hat in there." And she responded immediately saying, "Yes, you know what? You are right. Give me a day." A day later, she had set up for this guy to meet the CEO of the company. Not even the hiring manager or anyone else, directly to the CEO.
Yeah.
The guy got a job.
Yeah, I love this story because it's so much closer to our reality than we might think. Everybody knows someone who has a story like that, but it actually happens.
Yes.
And that's the power of networking. But I think people underestimate the word network, right?
Yes.
How important is it to actually to put some effort into it? Because it's, after all, it is work.
As you've been married 6 years, I've been married 40 years. You have to put your work into that as well. Every single...
No, actually, I don't. You met Michelle. Mine is easy.
But you have to work on everything. You have to work on a relationship. Yeah? You have to work on everything. So when you're turning around and creating, you're talking about creating a profile for yourself. I tell immigrants you should be posting every day. If not every day. So I share with you how many times a day I post. Twice, thrice. If I find something, I may have posted 5 times in it.
On LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
Guys, we have to change that. I post every 2 or 3 months.
No, that is where the gold mine is, my friend. I have not reached out and done a cold call in the past 3 years.
Oh, wow. So your clients and your partners, they come to you.
They connect with me because they see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of my favorite things is, why should corporations connect with immigrants? Let's have that discussion, right? And if you're a marketing person in a cell phone company, you're gonna say, "What is he talking about?" I think we should have a conversation about this. How do we reach this audience? What are the elements of reaching this audience where we can actually have measurability? And that's what I do.
And Nick, since we're talking about what to talk about,
Yes.
What should immigrants be aware of when, things that they should not be talking about?
Very simple. It's so simple, it's not funny. Here's what you should talk about: the weather. Every Canadian loves talking about the weather, and hockey. Every Canadian loves talking about hockey. Did the Canucks win or the Canucks lose? What are the chances? Will we ever get the Grey Cup? The
Stanley Cup.
The Stanley Cup, or is it going to be a dream? Maybe in the next generation, maybe next century. These are standard safe topics. Do not talk about religion, sex, personal stuff. Don't ask, don't tell.
How about politics?
Definitely not, because it's your personal thing. If it's personal, if you're in a corporate environment, these are not subjects that you can talk about. Yes, you can talk about, and you know what's a good way of finding out, Alton, is to ask a Canadian, "How was your weekend?" And you'll notice that they'll skirt any personal stuff. Weekend was very good. We went out for a walk and we did this stuff. So it's very simple, very, very general.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to politics, because in some countries, people talk a lot about politics. I was born in Brazil. Brazilians love talking about politics. They're super open about it. And I noticed also we had someone working with us from Iran.
Yes.
Very, very political.
Yes.
And in some other places too.
Yeah.
But in Canada,
India as well.
I learned with my wife not to talk about politics. I thought it was the most normal thing. yeah, of course, I think this is how I think, blah, blah, blah. And I think the whole world should think like me. And then I realized, if you open your mouth to talk about something like this, you have a 50% chance of people not willing to engage with you any longer.
So I keep saying, switch to weather.
Switch talking about the weather.
Switch to peanut butter. Talk about anything, broccoli, whatever you want to talk about. Leave religion. Religion is no. Even sexual orientation. Now they talk about sexual orientation in companies. That's not a subject that they'd encourage conversation. Why? Because if it becomes heated, if it becomes a subject of confrontation, they don't want to have that. And then you've got a whole lot of things to talk that could lead to problems in the workplace, and I think they want to stay away from that. So I'm for that. I mean, I think it's a work environment. You go there to work and you get out there. Yes, you can make friends. They can become your great friends. No question about it. But
it can also make enemies.
It can create
for no reason.
Yeah, you can talk to someone who, it's very difficult to gauge what someone's political, religious leanings are, what someone's sexual orientation is. You can't turn around and say things like this in public.
Especially in Canada.
Canada. First of all, we'd apologize 20 times before we said saying. I'm sorry, I thought of saying it. So I have to apologize 5 times more. Love him. I love Canadians. Again, I've got to be very candid. When I talk about all this stuff, people get the feeling that, I'm all for immigrants. And I keep saying, please understand this. The underlying theme of everything I do is as a proud Canadian. Okay? When an immigrant succeeds, Canada succeeds. So I know you're going to ask me this question. We talked about this. So what is it that the government can do? There are some things that the government can do and some things that the government is doing, and they need to do more. So let's talk about that. Number one is what has helped is wage subsidies have helped. What do I mean by wage subsidies? So when the government says we will pay a newcomer's wages and we'll pay on the basis of, a sliding scale, but basically an employer will get a break because they're hiring an immigrant, okay? Because their skill set. Now, research showed 87% of immigrants who were hired through a wage subsidy were made permanent employees. Now, let me give you the math. Let's say your wage is $120,000. That's your salary scale, okay? So if you're sitting at home for a year, and apart from the cost it is for you because you couldn't get a job, imagine that out of $120,000, roughly $36,000 will go by way of taxes to federal and provincial governments. $36,000. So when you're sitting at home without a job, the government is losing $36,000 a year.
Max. Okay.
That's okay.
So we can switch to this camera here. Okay.
Yeah.
So $36,000.
So the government has to do more of this. Fortunately, we live in a province in British Columbia. We've got an amazing program. Actually, a program that helps immigrants get jobs. It's a wage subsidy program. But it's not national. This is where my fight is. Why is it not national? Something that works, why don't you do nationally? Oh, but this province has decided, no, but you've got to push it. The federal government has to push that. It's available in IT on a national basis. But why is it available for all professions? In BC, it's available for all professions.
Is it because the government is only looking for specific professions in specific areas?
Sometimes it's this maze that you just have to go through. There are agencies who'd want to do this. There are people who'd want to do it. There's the political will to do it. It just takes time. And the pandemic threw us 3 years behind.
So regardless of the location, of course, BC would look for something different than Ontario, than Quebec, etc. But in general, who is welcome in Canada? Who is the Canadian government looking for?
So the system is agnostic. The system does not look at people from a particular country. It's who applies. The US system is based on the lottery system, where each country has got a number of green cards available. So that's where you turn around and say countries which are more economically depressed, they will bring in people from there, larger numbers from there. Canada doesn't have that. Our express entry system basically says, put in your language scores, put in your education, find out where you stand as far as your total ranking is concerned, and you can come into the country.
Okay, the higher your points, the higher the chances, and nothing stands in between.
No, the points are the important. So points are on the basis of language, age, as I mentioned, younger people, so that they can contribute to the economy for a longer period of time.
And have kids.
Have kids, then that's the second generation that comes in. Right?
Mm.
So this is where it's important for in my thinking, that these programs, which are working programs, should be across the country. They should not be to one province. Now, BC is doing a great job of it. BC is doing an awesome job.
You just mentioned the second generation, and I always wanted to ask you, what has the second generation learned that their parents were not able to assimilate or to bring with them when they came to Canada? How big is that gap between the first and the second generation of immigrants?
It's not that big, unfortunately.
No?
It should be a lot bigger. I would like to see the second generation succeed much more than what it is. Unfortunately, it brings it down to the systemic barriers. There is a barrier towards people of color, bluntly.
Of color. So if we are even more blunt, I like being blunt. If we can be even more straightforward.
When the language came in, China, which was the number one source country, dropped. So China is probably at a number 3 or number 4.
It used to be number 1.
Yes.
And then India was number 2 for a while.
Yes. Now India is number 1.
By far.
By far.
By far. You go to universities or colleges across
50%.
Canada.
50% of people, 50% of
At least.
people coming in are coming from India.
Oh, okay. Coming in now. Yeah. Yeah, but in colleges and universities,
yeah,
I have noticed, because we actually work a lot with the education industry.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of students are from India now.
Yeah.
And I think the language helps them.
But their level of English and the requirement in corporate Canada, that's that gap we talked about the last episode. There still is a gap between that.
But let's switch to, and I know you are like that too. You always like to see, look, this glass is almost half full, right? Almost half full. 2/3. It's 1/3 full.
1/3 full.
1/3 full. What are the qualities? Because there are so many. But let's try to get down to the top 3 or 5 qualities that immigrants tend to have, and that are an edge for immigrants.
So define qualities. Do you mean skills?
No, I mean more personality qualities.
Oh, yeah.
For example, one of them is, if you were able to leave everything behind,
yeah,
and come all the way here to start,
yeah,
everything from scratch,
yeah,
I know you can accomplish a lot in your life.
Yes. So there are some reports that are there. There's some anecdotal stuff that's there. So number one is people who've moved to another country before coming to Canada have a higher chance of success. So for example, I moved from India, I moved to Oman, and from Oman to United Arab Emirates. Okay, so I moved. So Canada is actually the 3rd country I'm living in, right? So I've gone through change twice over.
That made you more resilient.
That made you more able to adapt. Your adaptability quotient goes up. That helps. Okay, number one. Number two is personality types. Look, everyone's not going to be an extrovert. I understand that. I understand. As long as people understand that, for your career, you need to have certain outreaches that you're going to have to do. And if you don't do those, it's going to be harder for you. So we talked about Toastmasters in the last session. We talked about meetup groups. We talked about there's so many online groups. So there's so much out there. You cannot stay in Canada and live and work in Canada living in a cocoon. You cannot do that. Those are the qualities I would think are the most important. Everyone comes in, they know how to use computers, they know how to use laptops, they know how to use smartphones. They're not dummies because they're looking at the age they're coming in. Because of the age gap, the age limitation, you're getting younger people coming in. So they're going to be computer literate. They're not like the earlier generations that I saw who didn't have that computer literacy. But being computer literate doesn't mean that you automatically know how to use LinkedIn. The mistakes I talked about were with people who are using LinkedIn shows that they don't understand that.
Nick, one more thing. You actually wrote the book that the Canadian government hands out to newcomers.
Yes.
And I would like to talk a little bit about that before we finish this conversation and book you for the third episode. What are the main takeaways from that kind of guide?
When I came to Canada, if you had told me that I would write the official Government of Canada book that is given to every immigrant, every newcomer, every refugee, every student who comes to the country, I would say that's not possible. I wouldn't have thought it was beyond a dream, right? It's an impossible thing. But it happened because the minister turned around and said, I want Nick Noorani to write the book. I want an immigrant to write. And this goes towards that whole thing about marketing. Who better to write a book welcoming all immigrants into the country than an immigrant? It was a very emotional thing, and I'm blessed. I'm very blessed because Canada's given me lots of opportunities. So when we talk about if there's any final things I have to say, here are a couple of things I'd say. Canada and Canadians, I owe a lot to them. I always say that the love that Canadians have shown me has been immeasurable, and I'm always so grateful. The Canadian heart is bigger than the size of this country, and I'm blessed to have been working with immigrants and with newcomers and with Canadians to see how we can improve our country economically and socially.
Great, and you have been doing this quite well, inspiring thousands of people like you did with me 12 years ago. Nick, if you could go back in time 25 years, with the knowledge that you have and the experience that you have now, and your kids growing up in Canada, and you meeting thousands of other immigrants and Canadian-born people as well, professionals, what would you personally have done differently, maybe to speed up to shorten your path to success in Canada?
I think my path has been actually quite fast. If you look at where I started from, at my first job was $25,000 a year.
You're not going to tell me how much you're making now. I thought that's where we're headed. Don't say that.
It's been a big journey. It's been an amazing journey. As I'm sitting here talking to you, it's been 12 years since we've met and we talked. And I'm thinking about all the flashbacks that go through. I was the Grand Master for the first Canada Day parade in Vancouver. I'm walking down the streets of West Georgia with a whole parade of top 25 award winners behind me. I mean, amazing. Everything that's happened in my life has happened in such a way I couldn't even. I'm sitting in India. This is I don't know how many years ago, and I got an email saying, "Congratulations, you have been awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award for service to Canada." So all of these things have happened. It's nice to get them, But that's not the focus. The focus is how do we create a lasting legacy? How do we broaden this army of ambassadors from 25 to 1,000? How do we create an ecosystem which helps them all the time create their own segments, create their own topics, have them across the country? Whereas I'm talking to you, we're working on several projects. The next project that we're working on is a project called I'm Mentor, where once you go into the immigrant networks matching system, you can then move into going into a room where you choose your mentor. And our mentorship is again digital. It's not 3 months, 6 months. No, it's for you to get a job. At the end of that mentorship, you can then select whether you want to go for another mentorship. That's your prerogative. But everything is with the immigrant at the center. Of late, I've noticed a lot of people who have been trying to scam the system. There are a lot of people who are floating $3,000 resumes, and I've been against this because I think that's conning the immigrant. I wouldn't pay $3,000 today. I wouldn't pay 25 years ago. So we've created Immigrant Networks Marketplace. Marketplace will have all these products at good market rates that immigrants can afford. So we're going to have different programs that will be available there. That's the marketplace. We're also launching ImTalent. ImTalent is a recruitment platform. So for the first time, there's a platform for immigrant talent. And we're going to go out to corporate Canada and say, do the right thing for the future of Canada and for the future of your company.
I'm so impressed. We're going to have to call you back to talk about those projects after they have all been launched. And maybe with 10,000 members.
Yes.
Nick, last time you were here, we ended the podcast with you actually giving a message, a very positive, upbeat message to our audience. Yeah. Do you want to do that again?
Absolutely.
What would you like to say?
I would say here's what you need to do. If you're an immigrant and you're watching this and you have not used any services provided by the government, talk to your local MP. Talk about what you'd like to see. If you'd like to see services delivered in the digital format or in person, talk to them. If you don't talk to your MP, the message won't go to Ottawa. Every one of us, we have to choose and be part of the Canada that our next generation is going to live in. Your job.
Thank you so much. Nick, it was, again, an immense pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about something with another immigrant who understands. And because we're both immigrants, our journeys may have started at different times, but our paths are so similar.
They are very similar. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching another episode with Nick Noorani and another episode of the Canadian Dream Podcast. Remember to like the video, to share it, and to subscribe to our channel. And I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.